Hey, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with Bryan Mattimore from growth-engine.com. And Bryan has a really important question for you, and that's, what is your big idea? And what actions are you going to take to develop your big idea in the next 21 days? And is your big idea going to sit in that graveyard of all the big ideas you've had and never implemented? Or are you going to grow this into the business that you know you should build that can change your life? So we're here with Bryan, who is the co-founder of the 20-year-old Growth Engine Innovation Agency. He's written 3 books, including Idea Stormers and 21 Days to a Big Idea. He's facilitated over 1,000 ideation sessions, 200 successful innovation projects leading to $3 billion in new products and services. He's an innovation instructor at Caltech. He is the guy to talk to listen to if we want to develop our big idea. So Bryan, glad to be talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. So I was intrigued by your question. What do you do with your big idea? In some ways, my work is to help people get that big idea. People will have small ideas and they say, oh my gosh, how do we get a big idea? And so I've spent really my life pioneering ideation and innovation processes to help people both get those big ideas, and then to your point, once they have those big ideas, what do they do with them?
And maybe this is getting the cart before the horse, but have you heard an idea that's like so cool and so big and which is like the biggest, the best idea you ever come across? Is that a thing?
Well, this gets to the notion of, if you will, disruptive innovation versus innovation that creates huge businesses, but is not necessarily disruptive, right? And so to create a new iPhone, that can be pretty disruptive. To create a new Chips Ahoy cookie, as we have done, it seems easy, but it frankly isn't, And so when we did the Brownie Chips Ahoy cookie, that's a very simple idea, but it led to a $100 million business. So is that a huge idea? No, it's not going to really change the world, but it created a whole new platform, a whole new cookie platform for Mondelez at the time. So we hit a lot of singles and doubles and triples, and occasionally these singles and doubles will turn into home runs. I didn't really answer your question. I'm skirting it a little bit because in these times, I think you probably have to be linked into some very sophisticated new technologies to create the truly disruptive innovation.
And that's interesting to think about, that your big idea to be successful, to be something that goes somewhere, it does not have to be disruptive, right? It does not have to be the iPhone. It can be the Brownie Chips Ahoy cookie.
Yeah. And in fact, it's interesting, the word disruptive, it's typically applied against disrupting the marketplace. But if you have an organization to do something that's disruptive, it will also disrupt your organization, because you may have to come up with a new brand, a new distribution channel, a new technology, right? A new package, a new positioning, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that is very hard. Now, one of the appeals of disruption is that you can get higher margins if you're first mover advantage, first to market, right? And we've had clients who said, yeah, we want disruptive technology. And then they say, yeah, but we want under the current brands, under the current distribution center, our current sales force. And then of course you say, well, okay, but that's not really going to be disruptive, right?
Right. And it's interesting that you put it that way, because it's like they want the upside of the disruption without the downside of the growing pains of throwing something out to create something else. They just want all the benefit without the work.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's absolutely true, because doing disruptive stuff is really hard, right? And frankly, and I'm giving a lot of CPG examples here because they're fun, new products. But when we did, the Hearty Grains line for Thomas's English Muffin, right, which was essentially putting more wheat in an English muffin to make it healthier, and it became a huge success. It represented 30% of their business, new platforms, new people, younger consumers coming into the business. Well, initially when they brought that to the board said, whoa, I don't know. We do white English muffins, not brown English muffins. And so for them, I mean, that was a big deal because they had 100 years of doing white English muffins, and the general manager was so passionate. He had seen how passionate the consumers were in the focus groups, pushed it through, and it became the product of the year, and led to huge margins and profitability for the organization. And by the way, that was somewhat disruptive in that figuring out how to get that higher wheat content and still keep the nooks and crannies. It was not easy. The research food scientists initially didn't think they could do it, but of course they did.
And I love those little problems that it's almost like you create them for yourself and then you solve them. And then everyone else is thinking like, how the heck does he even make that work? Because sometimes I do like computer programming and create software and things like that. And sometimes I'm trying to make it load in this amount of time or to be this small amount of file size or to like get this thing to work like this quickly. And I'm just like, feel like, man, I'm the one that created this problem. But then once it gets past the finish line, people are going to wonder like, how the heck did you do that? Kind of like, how do they make the wheat content like that? And how'd they make it even work?
Yeah. And so we run into those quote problems that are created all the time. We have all kinds of different techniques we use, problem redefinition. We worked with one company. How do we sell more life insurance to Catholics? Okay, I mean, that's a weird problem, but that was their business. And there's a technique called problem redefinition. You redefine the we, you redefine the verb sell, and you redefine Catholics. You do this sort of Chinese menu combination thing, and you come up with all kinds of new problems, right? So how do we get the board of directors to give away life insurance to parochial schools that have Catholics in them? And so you redefine the problem. You're giving yourself problems, literally thousands of problems, and then you come up with ideas to address those. The other thing I would say about these problems, sometimes we create impossible problems for ourselves. And I see, middle managers, like we work with the city of New York and state of New York, they're in bureaucracies. It's tough, right? And they are in impossible situations at times. Well, we have to, perform this with lower, not the same number of people. We don't have the budget, and it is an impossible challenge, frankly. And when you're in that state, then the technique that works best is questioning assumptions. So you go back and you question all those assumptions you've made. There's also a problem called 20 questions technique, and all those kind of work to reframing how you think about your challenge. So you can get yourself in a software box that you may not be able to get out of, and a software development box, and if you do, then I would recommend you question the assumptions.
And it seems like what you've described so far is that maybe there's like a toolbox of different techniques, such as you said, like redefining the problem, questioning the assumption, so that maybe you have this problem and you're stuck on it because you've been looking straight at it and you've just been going at it with this one pattern of logic. And you say, well, here's this other ways to attack it from the side. And maybe one of these other tools will get you what you want.
You nailed it again. We have 4 classes of ideation techniques we use. And by the way, if the listener takes anything out of this thing, I wrote an article recently for Forbes. It's when will you stop brainstorming and start ideating, right? Because brainstorming is shown not to work. Ideation, which is what we specialize in, there are 4 classes of techniques we've identified. Questioning techniques, which we just talked about, metaphorical techniques, visual techniques, and fantasy techniques. And all of those trigger different parts of the brain. So if the questioning assumptions doesn't work, then you go to semantic intuition. If that doesn't work, then you go to the trizz triggers. If that doesn't work, you go to worst idea or silly idea. And if you bang around with all these in your toolkit, to use your word, Robert, you will get there, right? You will, and getting there, maybe frankly, just redefining your challenge. You went in with one way you thought of it, and now you're thinking of it in an entirely different way.
And when you describe some of that, we're just talking on a really high level, so I didn't really quite get each of those 4 categories. But it seems to me, from what little I picked up from it, it's like they talk about the 4 types of creativity, right? There's like the deliberate, cognitive, and the deliberate, spontaneous, and there's like the 4 quadrants. And it's almost like almost any problem solving kind of fits into that, right? Like there's the straightforward way of going about it. And then there's on the like the diagonal to the diagram, there's like the magical kind of undefined, sometimes you luck into it. And then there's kind of the off to the side approaches, like basically one's kind of the past and one's sort of the future. And it seems like anytime I'm stuck, I kind of think in one of those four boxes. And if I'm completely stuck, I'm thinking, well, what are the four boxes, right? If I'm not even sure at all, if I'm like, well, I don't even know which problem solving technique to use, I'm like, but if there were four categories, what would they be? And then I kind of begin to get on the path of like, okay, what questions should I be asking? But even speaking with you, it seems like if we're stuck, it might even just be, we don't even know. We don't even know the answer, but we don't even know the question. It's almost like you have to take a step or two back and be like, okay, what's even the question in the first place?
Well, you're absolutely correct. I mean, we had a client come to us and say, can you help us invent new irons, irons to iron your clothes? And we said, yeah, we can help you with that. But that's the last question we want to address. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, we have to redefine that challenge because you have so many assumptions about what an iron is, right? It's got the metal plate, it's got the holes, And so we went into that challenge. We reframed it as how do you create a new anti-wrinkle device, right? So we're focused on the benefit, not the feature or the mechanism, right? And we actually went in with a broader definition even than that. It was how do we create new garment care devices? And I know from experience that if we had gone in and say, let's invent a new iron, our ideas would have been much closer in because all the assumptions you make, again, this gets back to questioning assumptions about how you go about doing that. So you're absolutely right. You can actually go down a certain path with a certain problem definition, but you need to be flexible that you may want to redefine that definition as you come up with ideas and learn more and understand that it's really the breakthrough insight may be the process, to your point, Robert, that you come up with to solve it and the redefinition of that problem.
And do you ever have difficulties with, you have these clients, you have these big brands, and maybe they've been stuck in doing the same way for the past 120 years. And you say, well, you're telling me to fix this problem, but really the problem is completely different. Do you come across any kind of resistance where they say, well, this isn't what we asked you. This isn't what we want to pay you to change for us?
We do, absolutely. But some of the tricks are if you involve people early in the process and so that they start coming up with the ideas themselves. I mean, we're there. I mean, yeah, we get ideas, but we don't do the ta-da. We don't go say, we're God and you're not. Here's the breakthrough idea. No, we force their teams to be involved in this process so that when some of these breakthrough ideas occur, number one, I may have helped them get there, but I want them to take credit for it. And then that's the only way that thing, frankly, I shouldn't say the only way, but that's the way it's going to happen. If you're going to innovate successfully, which is hard, the resistance, in the organization, you need people to be passionate about it. And you want them to been part of the process creating it. And so that's a key for successful innovation teams to get as many of you get the finance guy in there, right? You get the IT guy in there because they all then have ownership and they can then go to the board and say, no, we've heard consumers, they love this, we got to go do this because they were part of the process. But you're absolutely right. There's resistance every step of the way as an innovator, right? It's, and the resistance is not bad. It's the nature of an organization to try to be more efficient and whereas innovation is generally pretty inefficient, right? So it's this, eternal struggle, but you got to do both. You got to do both.
And what I'm hearing from your answer there is how important it is to sort of work the salesmanship into your idea in whatever context that means. And in this case, it might be, like you said, involve the finance guy or involve this person in early and almost make them think that they came to the conclusion. And it seems like that seems like a huge problem, right? Of having a really good idea, something that really should be done, but just not setting the building blocks in place in the right order. So that way you have like the strategy or like the storytelling or breaking down the objection. So that way people will be open to your idea because I mean, you probably know better than anybody. If you have this really good idea but you present it improperly or you're too forceful with it, then no one wants to do it. So I'm hearing from you like how important it is to have like that massaging and that nuance in order to sell the idea itself.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about innovation versus ideation here, right? The process of bringing it to market. And, my dad had started a company under the auspices of Time Incorporated. It became the second largest research firm in the nation. But he got the eureka moment in a flash, and it took him 7 years to get the board to put, actually they allotted the money after 3 years, the $10 million to go do this thing. And then it was another 4 years before this thing became profitable. So the innovation, it was being creative at every step of the way. So you're absolutely right. A big part of successful innovators, my business partner did Mentadent toothpaste. When he went to the board and got the $10 million to build the plant for that, he had meetings with every member of the board a month before that board meeting to answer any questions they might have, because and address those before they got to the meeting, so there wouldn't be a yay or nay. It was kind of like everybody was on board by that. But the point was that yes, salesmanship of your ideas is frankly as or more important than the first eureka moment, right? It's all that, and you can use all these techniques that are in my book, not only to come up with the big idea, but to come up with how you innovate that idea, solve the hundreds, if not thousands of challenges you're going to have to bring that idea to market.
And I like that a lot, that there for sure is the art side of the idea and of plucking out those solutions. But then it seems like there's the science aspect of the coin as well, where you're like, well, we also need to be organized, and we also need to have somewhat of a timeline. We need to plan ahead, and we have to maybe try to anticipate the challenges that we'll have, or budget this money or this time in order to kind of navigate this treacherous path of getting to where we need to go. So I'm hearing like there's the salesmanship that's required, but also kind of the being organized. And so you're mentioning that this book, and so does this book have any sort of like a catastrophic failure? Because we're talking about big ideas and big risks. But when the whole entire thing completely burns to the ground, that's exciting, right? When the nuclear bomb goes off, like that's what we want to hear about, that sort of drama. So does the book have any like total complete disaster in it at some point?
Well, there's several books. One is Idea Stormers, which is really how to get people to come up with new ideas. And yeah, there have been failures. I mean, our success rates in packaged goods marketing is about 70%, which is extraordinary. The success rates are typically maybe 10%. And by the way, we haven't really talked about it, but a key to these success rates is being iterative. So you get ideas, build them, with consumer insights and presenting them to consumers and getting their input. And you do that enough, and sooner or later you're going to get the price, the package, all those elements will come together successfully. But we had one product we worked on. Again, I'll just use a food example because it's so approachable. It was for Thomas's, and it was bagel holes, right? And it was such a cool idea. We had them in shapes of footballs and baseballs and basketballs, and for young kids. And when we did the research on this, it was unbelievable. We had people, crawling under the table, grabbing my leg, saying, because they were delicious and they're wonderful. The problem with that was we couldn't get the price value equation right, because mom didn't want to spend $4 on something the kid's going to eat, in one sitting. And so that was a quote failure in the marketplace. And we, to be honest, we tried to get them not to launch it until we figured that out. But they're internal politics, and I can mention this now because we've had tremendous success in other arenas. But they're failures, and you just lick your wounds and moved on. We had one, a corn English muffin. We tested through the roof. It failed because the lab samples were different than the produced samples. We went back 2 years later, and then it became a big success. So I don't know if that's a catastrophic failure. That's not $100 million failure. And by the way, that's a key thing here is you try to fail quick and easy and simple, right? and get the learning along the way. And by the way, one just tip for people who want to test their products, use ugly prototypes, right? And what do I mean by that? We were doing a project for Dr. Scholl's, and they said, oh, we can 3D print these things and they'll look so cool and all the rest. And we said, no, we want ugly. We're going to use duct tape and cardboard. And why would we do that when you could have these really cool finished samples? It's because if it's too finished, consumers will say, yeah, I like red versus blue, versus saying, well, that thing doesn't look like it would fit my foot very well. Or how can you make it more oval? Or where's the air coming in? The point is, with ugly prototypes, which are cheaper and quicker to make anyway, you can get a lot more learning, which is what it's all about at these early stages, the learning.
And that's interesting to think about, that you want to, like, what's the point of it, right? Of making the prototype. It's not necessarily to say, okay, well, let's use it as is, but figure out, okay, what areas can we improve? And so yeah, these are some really cool things to think about. And especially that whole, it's for sure a cliche to iterate through failure, right? That you always hear about, this famous baseball player, they strike out this number of times, and, Steve Jobs failed all this. But I like how you said how to fail, it was something like quick, simple, and easy, yeah. Or quick or early, or something like that. So that way, fail early, so that way you get the bugs out when you're just at this small scale and you're not 6 months in. And also that it's like, instead of hoping that everything will ride on just this one attempt, you say, well, I expect to fail way more times than I succeed, but I only need to succeed once or a handful of times in order to get to where I need to go. And like you said, it's also fun to focus on maybe the outside the box niches, to think about like how this is working in the food industry, because it's so easy to get stuck in your own vertical, right? If you're just in like automotive, you think about other automotive stuff, but if you thought about how this other industry went, you might even get some new outside the box ideas.
Absolutely. If you can mash up, it's called biomimetics, biology, with the design of your car, and take inspiration from nature, you're going to get a breakthrough idea. By the way, the other thing I want to say, Robert, is that all this stuff, we've talked a lot about new products, but our work, the ideation processes, can be used for anything. Can be used for coming up with new sales ideas, cost-cutting ideas, we've done mission, vision, and values work, and on and on and on, supply chain work. If anytime there's a problem or a challenge, or we think of as an opportunity, you can use these techniques and processes to get new ideas, right? And people, the point is, this is really inexpensive ways to reinvent your organization and to make it much more profitable. You got a problem, you invite your coworkers for pizza over an hour, you do a silly idea technique or worst idea technique, and all of a sudden you got a breakthrough idea, and what's that worth, right? It could be worth a lot. So I'm a big proponent and evangelist, obviously, for companies learning, and now a lot of our work now is frankly training companies in their teams how to be more creative, to learn these processes so they can use them on an ongoing basis, and frankly don't have to call us to show up every month to help them with this stuff, right?
Yeah, so I think you're onto something, and I think that this is kind of exciting, especially just breaking the mold, breaking those old tired patterns of things have been done this way for decades, and figuring out new solutions. And even as you were kind of explaining that, you could fix this little problem, that little problem, there's that concept of like, if you fixed this 26% and this 26%, then all of your slight improvements would then compound, and then the whole business would be like completely unrecognizable, because you fix this in the supply chain, you fix this in the marketing, you fix this in the product development, and then all those little things add up. So there's more than one way to solve a problem, and maybe we just been too stuck in our thinking or stuck in the way things been done with our team. And so in a moment, we want to make sure to mention your books and your websites here, Bryan, but in the tail end of our conversation here, do you have like a number one secret, or do you have like a best idea that's is like super cool, but then so many people are missing out on? Anything come to mind there?
Yeah, there are two. I'll just do two quickly. One is the and technique. So I wrote it in my book, Idea Stormers. I had asked to talk to the Asco Flores, flower association in Colombia, and I came up with 50 ideas on how to help them market for new flowers. And the key there was just mash up flowers or whatever industry you're in with other industries. And you alluded to this before. So flowers plus sports. Okay, we get, the Mets, corsage or whatever, or flowers plus religion. Okay, we've got a thing for the Saints, right? Or, so it's a mashup of this plus that will equal a new thing. So how simple is that, right? I mean, that's incredibly simple. So just mash up your world with another world. If you're in the hospitals and you want to reinvent a hospital, mash it up with a hotel. And all of a sudden you'll get new ideas, right? So that's one technique. And the other one that's really, really fun and really easy and this takes the pressure off, is to come up with not good ideas, but bad ideas. We call it the worst idea technique or the silly idea technique. We were helping the ASPCA get New Yorkers to adopt ex-drug dealer pit bulls. I mean, give me a break, right? And so the silly idea technique we used there was, dress them up in costumes and take, have virtual adoptions where you have set up cameras and then et cetera, et cetera. And all of these were quite successful, led to the national campaign championing the personality of the dog. So that was a successful campaign. But the technique is really simple. You just come up with a lot of bad ideas, and then you say, as bad as this idea is there any way I can do the opposite or take something crazy out of it and turn it into a good idea? So throw up soup. Well, maybe it's a soup for hospital patients, or slime soup, right, for kids, or soup with body parts in it, right? This becomes, zombie soup, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are the two techniques that are just really easy and fun to use. The and technique, and this is in the book Idea Storm, there's also 21 Days to a Big Idea, but also the worst idea technique or the silly idea technique.
I like that a lot, that by listing those bad ideas, something might jump out at you. And you have to wonder if a lot of these innovations came about that way. Like even you think about your phone has no power button, right? Or has no keyboard. And a decade ago, that would have been crazy talk. Or like I can't remember the last time I had a TV that actually had an off button. So just some of these weird things, like you wonder if someone listed all these things and said, maybe you're on to, you can't take the battery out of your phone anymore because maybe we just decided that you don't need to. And then that gives us some hidden benefits, advantages to doing it. So my mind has been blown here.
Well, and one of the really powerful things is to say, what can we limit to what we're doing to create something new? So what's Twitter? I mean, that's an idea to limit the number of characters, right? On this Curious and Quirky podcast for Caltech, I talked about, the power of limiting yourself, right? Add constraints, how about that movie, the one where they didn't have sound on it, right? With the I've forgotten that anyway, but the
Quiet
point
Place.
Is, what's that? Yeah,
A Quiet Place.
Yeah, exactly. Let's limit the sound. Or Clubhouse, right? We're not going to use video. We're just going to use sound in this case, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a very interesting strategy that you're alluding to as well, Robert.
Yeah, TED Talk is 17, 18 minutes. There's only so many things you can fit into it, and you have to really make it count. So yeah, the limitations, the restrictions might then give you something that you would not have come across otherwise. And speaking of,
yes. And by the way, my TEDx talk, if anybody's interested, where I go into some 18 minutes of detail on this, is called Solving Impossible Challenges. Is the name.
Fantastic.
Of the talk.
So we will make sure to give a link to that TEDx talk on the show notes. And in the meantime, Google search Bryan Mattimore TEDx, and that way we can find your TED talk on that. And as far as getting to your website and your books and all that, what are the resources? What are the links? Where do we go?
Well, thank you. So growth-engine.com is the website. The newest book is 21 Days to a Big Idea. I have another book coming out this year on centers of islands of invention, on innovation centers. And the master work is Idea Stormers, How to Lead and Inspire Creative Breakthroughs. And also all our training work now is if anybody's interested in creativity and ideation and innovation training, we've created courses around that as well. So the easy way is just to go on our website or email. They can email me at bmattimore@growth-engine.com.
Fantastic. And to repeat that, bmattimore@growth-engine.com. And the website is growth-engine.com. And even just exploring some of these ideas, it feels like, remember having like a school assignment, Bryan, and being like, oh, I've got to write this paper, but I could go off and do this kind of fun thing, this fun activity off to the side. This can be that fun activity, right? If we're delaying that business activity that we know we need to do, or we need to do research on that, maybe we can take a break and go and have fun and explore some fun and playful ideas and come up with something that we would not have come up with if we were just doing the same old day in and day out thinking. You always hear about how some huge percentage of your thoughts, like 98% of your thoughts, are just the same ones on repeat. I mean, what a dull existence, right? So it's time to break the chains and to come up with something new, and go to growth-engine.com. Go there. You'll be glad you did. You can find out about everything Bryan has going on, including his books and more. Any final parting words of advice before we wrap up here, Bryan?
No, I just want to thank you, Robert, for having me on. And I do think that the last thing I would say is that, we're in the talent wars, right? And talent is one, right? And we have discovered through a lot of the work that we've done is that if you can create an environment where people are allowed and encouraged to be creative, you will find A, that it's more fun, B, that you're probably going to be a lot more profitable and grow more rapidly, but also, frankly, you're going to retain and attract new talent, because people want to work for an organization that is dynamically creative. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us, frankly, to encourage this kind of creativity. And I know from our work that's true, especially if you want to attract the best and brightest to your organization.
I love it. It's just, there's so many hidden benefits, and it just increases from there, upward spiral. So growth-engine is the place to go. And thank you, Bryan, for stopping by, blowing my mind, blowing our audience's mind. Now we can think in a completely different way.
Thank you, Robert. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.